This is Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. I'm Nancy Solomon. The teaching faculty at the State University in New Jersey, Rutgers, are on strike. It's shut down classes on all three of the huge school's campuses, and it's jeopardizing the ability of seniors to finish their last semester and graduate. Rutgers staff and students, do you have a question for the governor? The number to call is 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. And we'll also be taking your questions via social media using the hashtag AskGovMurphy. The number again, 844-745-TALK. And we're joined now by Governor Phil Murphy. Good evening, Governor.
Nancy, nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
Great to see you. And before we get to the Rutgers strike, let's talk about another huge story that happened on Friday, the abortion pill rulings. Two competing federal judges issued opposite rulings on whether the FDA should continue to allow the use of the abortion pill. This is the pill that's been approved and safe to use for more than 20 years. After the Texas judge ordered the FDA to stop allowing its use, a Washington state judge ordered the FDA to continue making it available. This seems likely to go soon to the Supreme Court, where reproductive rights have frankly been under attack, right?
You bet.
So you've made protecting those rights here in New Jersey a priority. Where does this latest move leave us?
I'll tell you something. I never imagined a country with a judge that would have the power to say that an institution that's based on science and fact that made a decision 20 years ago was completely wrong. I mean, it's cloud cuckoo land. It's absolutely beyond any expectation. I'll speak for myself. We probably should have expected the Wild West once Roe was struck down. So you're absolutely right. New Jersey's has done, and will continue to do everything we can to protect a woman's reproductive freedom. Among other things, the U.S. government filed an appeal today, and New Jersey filed an amicus brief alongside of the U.S. government. I think this judge in Texas gave the administration 1 week to appeal, so the administration has appealed. I signed two laws, in fact, last July, which protected women, doctors, anyone who enabled the process, including, for instance, a doctor who prescribes through telehealth one of the two abortion pills to someone perhaps out of state, in a state that has hostile laws in terms of reproductive freedom. We protect that individual in New Jersey. By the way, folks out there probably know this. It's a two-pill process. Only one of them is under assault at the moment, and we're all bracing for round two. We're trying to consider what other states are also considering, whether or not we want to go out there and aggressively stockpile one or both of these pills. No news to make on that, but we've got a whole army of folks looking at that. But this is crazy. This is, again, an assault on women. It's a full frontal assault on their rights, on their freedoms. It's completely and wholly unacceptable. And it's, as I say, at one level beyond any expectation, and at another level these days, we probably should have seen this coming, but we will fight it tooth and nail.
The Washington state judge who ruled in opposite of the Texas judge.
On the same day, I believe, right?
Yes. So in that ruling, there were only 17 states listed under that order, and neither New Jersey or New York are part of that. Does that matter at all? Like, is that going to play out in any way that affects us?
That hurts us? No. I'm told by our legal folks, and we've got some of the best, thank goodness, in the nation, that it will not. But we are aggressively pushing back on the decision that was handed down in Texas. You also saw, Nancy, 400 chief executive officers, I believe all of them in the pharmaceutical industry, sign on to a letter that said, wait a minute, this doesn't stop necessarily at abortion or reproductive freedom. If you're starting to call into question decisions that have been made by the Food and Drug Administration over the decades, you're calling into question the entire institution and basis in science and fact that these decisions have been made, which is frightening, not just in terms of women's reproductive freedoms, but beyond.
Folks, if you have a question for Governor Phil Murphy, give us a call at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-8255, or talk. And we have Tennyson Donier here in the studio with us, if you can call it a studio, and a reporter from WHYY and WBGO, and monitoring your social media texts to us. So, Tennyson, what do you have for us?
Hey, Tennyson.
How's it going?
Good.
So this question is from Sophia in Westfield. I know that you don't normally speak on legislation before it gets to your desk, but this might be interesting. What are your thoughts on S-2462, which
And we're not going to tell you what it is.
I know that it's right after S-2461.
So S-2462 essentially would push school start times back to no earlier than 8:30 a.m. So Sophia wants to know, can we expect to see these changes in school start times prior to the 24-25 school year? So next year, is there anything high school students can do to get involved in this issue?
That's a good question, Sophia. And I'll ask Alex Altman is with me as always. We'll get somebody in our team to follow up with Sophia. I don't think we've taken a position on it, but I am impressed by the science around a later start in terms of the added productivity that students have both in the classroom and then in extracurricular activities and sports. So I won't opine on a bill that has not come our way yet, but I would say to Sophia, we're open-minded. And I think what we'll probably do is want to follow up with her. Like anything else, depending on where she is in Westfield, although I'm pretty sure Senator John Bramnick is going to be on one side, and in terms of the Senate, that's something that she should follow up with her legislators without question. Not just following up with our office, which I promise you will make sure that happens, but with the legislative representatives, both in the Senate and the Assembly. But what I've heard about it is impressive, and color me open-minded.
You've had 4 teenagers that you've raised who are now grown up, except for mostly grown up. I mean, it's not easy for these kids to get up early in the morning.
No, it still isn't,
Yeah.
including we've got a couple who have jobs and a couple who are still in the college sphere. Yeah, and again, there's a fair amount of research that I know Senator Cody, former Governor Cody, has been a proponent of this, that you get a better production out of the kid, for lack of a better word, both in the classroom and, as I say, outside the classroom, extracurricular, sports, etc.
Yeah.
So open-minded, we should look at it.
Yeah. In my school district, they send the little kids to school later than they send the high school kids. And, and they want to try to recycle the buses and not have so many buses. So they don't want them all going at the same time, but they've got it backwards because the little kids are up at 6 a.m.
I would have thought it would be the other way around.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, you live in one of the best school districts, I could say, in America. So maybe they're onto something that we're not getting.
Okay, I'm still allowed to criticize them, though, as you have heard many times.
I'm shocked.
Okay, so let's talk about Rutgers University.
Yes.
You find yourself in the middle of one of the largest strikes we've seen in many years here in the region. Rutgers University full and part-time faculty and grad students are on strike. All 3 campuses, New Brunswick, Newark, Camden. So classes are effectively shut down. I know you met with both sides yesterday, which was the first day of the strike. So
again today.
What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, first of all, I said publicly and what I said to them privately, I'm not happy. It shouldn't have come to this. Having said that, we got everyone to come into a room. They all agreed to come in, and I'm happy that happened. And they've been in a room in the State House until very late last night, and they're there as we speak. Actually, many rooms in the State House because there are meetings, and then they've got to go off into their various corners. Someone said yesterday in a press conference, how should the students and their families feel about all this? And I said they should be pissed off, and so am I. So let there be no doubt about that. Having said that, we called everybody together on Sunday night. We've been obviously constantly involved on both sides of this. I should say all three sides, because we now have mediators involved as well. So they are folks, if you don't know the word, they're basically umpires, and they're trying to call balls and strikes here to try to help get this thing done. So we're in rooms since yesterday morning, as I mentioned, till late last night. Again, this morning, still there now, and I suspect it will go late into the evening. I've sat with them both yesterday and today and been working the phones. I just got off the phones with our guys. How would I characterize it? Some progress has been made. To use a word that was used by one of the Rutgers labor folks, representatives, there are enormous complexities. And I think part of those complexities have to do with the various bargaining units. So this is not, folks out there who may not be familiar with this may think there's a monolith of one type of member of a union at Rutgers. And in fact, that's far from the case. As you rightfully pointed out, includes part-time and grad students, et cetera.
That's precisely what's been so interesting about this strike, is that you have full professors, tenured, who have pretty good pay and working conditions, fighting for the adjuncts, who are really the bottom of the barrel. And they have become an increasing percentage of the teaching force, are the folks who are part-timers who don't get.
Correct.
It's worse than no benefits. They don't get even any, they can't plan a whole year. They go semester to semester.
It reminds me of the baseball strike a couple of years ago. I forget who the famous pitcher was. I think it was Max Scherzer, who was making $40 million a year, but he was the one showing up every day on behalf of the young folks who were making a fraction. And you've got a similar situation. And that's to the credit, I have to say, to the professors out there who are doing just that. Listen, I think we're the quintessential American organized labor state. So I want to get a solution that exudes, that reeks fairness to all of the categories that we're talking about, including the ones that have had a far less good shake, as it were. Now, progress, as I say, have been made. It's very complex. There's a lot of wood to chop. I'm an eternal optimist. We're going to keep everybody at the table. I said this publicly and privately. We're going to stay there until we get this done. And that's, I can guarantee you we're going deep into the night tonight. And God willing, we get a deal. The room today acknowledged the complexity on both sides. It was actually a room of goodwill, which is encouraging, which you don't always get. But again, I'm mad it came to this. But it has come to this. Let's forget for a moment who shot John and figure out a fair result here that reeks of New Jersey's values, particularly as it relates to the rights of those in unions, and it's a fair deal for everybody.
We got a couple of faculty members who have called in and are waiting to ask you a question. We have Dennis on the line from Trenton.
Hey, Dennis.
Hey there, Mr. Murphy, Governor Murphy. First of all, I'm a big fan. I voted for you before. Unless things go crazy, I can't imagine why I wouldn't vote for you. But I had a question. I had actually one question, but I have actually a follow-up to that. I hope you'll pardon me with that. The first question has to do with your choice of negotiators on behalf of the state. My understanding is that Mr. Cohen serves at your pleasure, and that you could replace him any time you wanted to. I mean, has he really served your needs in the negotiations with the AAUP? Because it seems to me as a member that he hasn't. So I just wanted to know what you thought about that. And if this ends up with a no confidence vote in Mr. Holloway at Rutgers, I mean, is that going to be something that would be a concern to you either? And thank you for taking my calls.
Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your service. I don't know that it makes a whole lot of sense of getting into individual personalities. I could not be clearer, and I've said this both in private and in public to both Rutgers and to the labor side at the highest levels. I'm not happy. I'm very frustrated that it got to this point. I think we probably all owe a postmortem here as to figure out how, in fact, it got to this point. But it has. And the minute we saw that it was landing there, we said, you know what, that's not going to work. You're going to come into a room together. The strategy I used was we're going to lock the door and throw away the key. And that's essentially what it's been like since yesterday morning. So let's leave that, Dennis, until we get a chance. Once we have a deal, God willing, we can look back and do a postmortem. I want to take ourselves out of the noise right now. And I say noise not to belittle this. Believe me, this is serious stuff with serious compensation, benefits, and non-economic items that are on the table and that are on the line. And these are livelihoods and lives. So, but allow me to step back for a second. Rutgers is a hot institution in all three of its campuses. And when you add up all of the progress that's being made, everything from equity to the research prowess, to the extracurricular activities, to the quality of the classroom and research experiences, it is an institution that is on a roll, and President Holloway deserves an enormous amount of credit for that.
Let's take a call from Liana, another faculty member at Rutgers. You're on the line with the governor.
Hey, Liana.
Hi, Governor Murphy. I'm actually a graduate worker here at Rutgers, New Brunswick, where I'm calling you from tonight. My union is on strike right now to support the most vulnerable workers and communities on our campuses. This includes our graduate workers, adjuncts, and undergrad students who we work with every day. This is a central motivation for the action that we're taking right now. This is why we're here. And I know that you share our values, which you just mentioned. These are New Jersey values. These are your values. And these are values that uplift diversity, equity, and expanded access to higher education. So my question for you tonight is, how do we move from values to action? How do we get this done?
Well, Liana, it's a great question. And by the way, the grad students and the adjunct are probably two of the most aggrieved populations in terms of what they get at the moment. And I think I think everyone understands that, but the question is, as they used to say, where's the beef? Nancy, you and I are dating ourselves by my saying, where's the beef? Leanna, the way we get this done is what we're doing right now. We've put people in a room and we've said, you're not leaving and we have a deal. And I've said that myself to them, both. I've said it publicly. I'm reiterating it right now. And I said it in that room yesterday, and I said it again in that room today. So that's how we get this done, and there's no other way around it.
Governor, can you do something to help Rutgers come to the table and be able to offer more in terms of the state budget and funding for the university?
As a general matter, yes. I don't want to get into the details because we're in the middle of that as we speak, but we are there not just in person and in a convening capacity. We are there in a meaningful, substantive way. I'll leave it at that, but the answer is yes. We are playing a role here, and we intend to play a role to get this done.
Right. I guess one last question I would have about Rutgers, and maybe we'll take one more call when we come back from the break, but we talked for a moment ago about the adjunct or part-time faculty and the problems both for pay and sort of working conditions for them. It seems to be that one of the pressures going on is that there are so many more part-time faculty now that are not just filling in little gaps and holes in the schedule, but are really like the main force of the teaching faculty. Is that something that you're interested in maybe, doing something about, making some change to?
Conceptually, yes, but this is not unique to Rutgers, particularly coming out of now the pandemic.
No, it's all over the country.
It's
happening
country.
At universities and colleges.
There's no trend at Rutgers that is unique to my knowledge. There may be degrees of it that are unique. And again, this does not belittle the substantive reality. These are people's lives and livelihoods, and they need to be treated with fairness. But yeah, it's a quick calculation, which we may want to get to after the after the break. But that's why you're seeing the numbers go up as dramatically as they are. And it's something I think we all, post-mortem, we ought to be looking at.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with more of your questions. You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy.
You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. Got a question for New Jersey's governor? Call us now at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. Pose your question on Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag AskGovMurphy.
We're live with Governor Phil Murphy. I'm Nancy Solomon. So I cut you off a little bit. Let's just talk about that for a couple more minutes. The problem with this increasing number of adjunct or part-time faculty, and yes, it's happening. It's not just a Rutgers problem. It's a problem all over. Do you have any sense of what the forces are that have created this problem, though? And then what would the state do about it?
I'm not an expert, Nance, but I think it's common sense. If you roll the tape back, how did the phenomenon begin in the first place? I'm assuming it was a combination of you, for lifestyle reasons, for other reasons, you were able to come in for X hours a week, but you couldn't devote your whole self to it. Or that you had an expertise, but you didn't have a terminal degree, but you had you were a category killer in some area. Other reasons like that. In other words, it was sensible, logical to have a track other than the track that says you must have a PhD, you must do research, you must publish, that there were pieces. My graduate degree is in business. You have a combination of PhDs and you've got some folks who have lived experience. I think what's been added to the mix, and again, this is not unique to Rutgers, is there's a bottom line piece here as well, I would think, right? It's
a cheap source of labor.
If you reshift the mix of who you've got and you can convince yourself legitimately, I'm saying that the same level of quality exists, that you could deliver that to the student body. Then you add to that a pandemic and fewer kids applying to college, the whole thing. And again, this is not unique to Jersey or to Rutgers. So we talk to Rutgers a lot all the time about all of this, including what professors can earn to do their research at Rutgers versus other Big Ten schools, other institutions of higher education, to keep them competitive, which then helps them attract the best talent, the highest quality research, which has an impact on the real economy, which redounds back to Rutgers' benefit. So I think no magic wand, but I think those are probably the broad strokes of what contributes to this. And again, at the end of the day, in a negotiation like this, fairness, equity has to be at the center of this, particularly in a state like New Jersey that has so much respect for higher ed and organized labor.
Hey, we have another teacher, this time a Jersey City teacher. I believe this is on a separate education subject. Saren in Jersey City. You're on the line with the governor.
Hey, Saren.
Hi, Governor Murphy. Thank you so much for taking my call. I wanted to ask you about the recommendations from the task force on the teacher shortage. And I read the report. I commend you for putting that task force together. And there's a ton of really amazing steps that can be taken to deal with the teacher shortage, which is unfortunately ever increasing.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you about what steps you are planning on prioritizing to deal with the shortage, because if you look at the recommendations, there's so many, and it really attacks the issue from all different angles. But I imagine there's only so much that you can do at once. So I'm curious what you plan on prioritizing and how you are going to figure out what should be prioritized.
It's a great question. And again, this is back to Rutgers. Jersey's not unique here. And like Rutgers, which is one of the best public universities in the country, particularly one that has a research budget, I think $900 million a year, which is very few can say that. We have the #1 public education system, K through 12 in America. So it's not just that everybody's dealing with teacher shortages. For us, it's existential. The task force was outstanding. Our policy chief, Dennis Zeveloff, chaired it. It had all sorts of different perspectives, the unions, the publics, the principals, supers, charters, everybody. I think they put out an outstanding report. And Saren, I'll give you 2 examples that we have put forward more aggressively than other of the recommendations. And that's not to say that we're in disagreement with the others. Number 1 is to achieve that holy grail of maintaining the quality of the profession and at the same time making it less bureaucratic to be a member of that profession. And the teachers would, I expect you, maybe one of them would also say, can you make our life easier once we are a member of the profession? And there are a bunch of stuff there that we're looking at. Separately, in the budget that we proposed, Alex will remind me, $10 or $15 million. We'll follow up with Sarah, and maybe Dennis can follow up with her and go through some of the others that would actually put money, cash on the barrel to pay for teacher apprentices, which we think, and I think that more importantly, the teachers think would be a game changer to get folks into the profession. Last comment would be, in talking to the big unions, they're really jazzed about some of the ideas that I just talked about. But they want us to double down, not just on getting new folks into but retaining the educators that are in the profession. I think that's sort of our next task.
Okay. Let's see what kind of questions are coming in on social media. Tennyson Danye, what do you have for us?
All right, I have a question from JV in Newark. In regards to the Passaic Valley Sewerage Commission, the Newark City Council has passed a resolution against PVSC's current proposal to add a 4th fossil fuel power plant to the Ironbound neighborhood of Newark. Will you support the Newark community in line with our goals to reach 100% clean energy by 2035 by intervening?
Yeah, so we are absolutely committed to 100% clean energy by 2035. And Tennyson said that sort of as though it's been in stone forever. That just got accelerated 6 weeks ago, I think, from 2050 to 2035 by yours truly. So I'm proud of that. I don't want to break my shoulder patting myself on the back, Nancy, but I do want to make that point. But to JB, we'll follow up with, this is a tough one. So this is, and let me just tell folks, if you don't know what it is. This is a so-called fossil fuel plant, but it's a backup plant that is only intended to run, and we've been very, very tough on the PVSC in terms of how often they would need to run this thing in order to make sure, it's like a generator. You got to run it occasionally to make sure the thing works when you need it. Well, why is it even a consideration? Because, and the folks in the Ironbound will remember this, during Superstorm Sandy, the entire system went down and it was inundated with sludge, sewer, yuck. And so this is intended to be only in continual use as a backup if there's another Superstorm Sandy. So what I've said to the environmentalists, and bless their hearts, and we've done so much, again, I'll put our record up against any state in America over the past 5.5 years, is I think there's a fair debate here. And I want to have that debate, and I want to be a part of it. Is it better to not have that plant at all, that would run only intermittently, or would only run in the case of a catastrophe like Superstorm Sandy? Or are we better off running it intermittently, and it would be there in case the roof fell in and you did have that catastrophe? I think that's a fair discussion to have. And so that's right. We'll follow up with JB though.
It does. I mean, this has come up many times, and
Not the first time.
Yes. This is, the community is saying, no, we don't want this. And we have the protections for communities that have taken on more burden of polluting.
Again, environmental justice. We're
right.
number one in the nation.
So why not support the community on this one?
Because first of all, not everybody in the community agrees with this. So I know JB does, and a lot of folks do, and I don't make light of that, but not everybody does. And secondly, I think there is a legitimate environmental justice debate to be had. How do you feel about getting inundated with sludge and crap as the Ironbound did in a once, maybe in I hope a lifetime, versus this runs every few days, every quarter, and is there to run continually only to prevent that from happening? That to me is a legitimate debate, even in an environmental justice context.
Yep, understood. Okay.
I'm going to stop patting myself on the back on the 2035 tennis. I apologize.
Okay, we're going to take some more calls. We have James from Newark on the line. James?
Hey, James.
Oh, hi. It's actually James from Mountain Lakes. And
I've been
listening to, hey, Phil, Governor Murphy. And I just want to say, listening to the conversation as a member of the Board of Education in Mountain Lakes, I compliment all of your efforts to help with the teacher shortage. But what I was calling about today is actually Newark Penn Station. And my question has arisen because I have college-age daughters, and I've had to drive them to the station, and it's a place where they get accosted. There's no place for them to wait and feel safe. And I mean, I can fend people off if they come up to me asking, basically I could get accosted also. But I wonder, it feels like Penn Station, New York, circa 1979. And I just don't understand. It seems like there's no one's thinking about it. I don't see it in the news. I don't see any initiatives. And it's a shame. It's a historic, beautiful station, but people go out of their way to drive to Metro Park so they can avoid having to experience what it is to go into that place. And so I wonder if I imagine it's owned by Amtrak, the federal government. Maybe there's not as much you can do as the governor, but I'm wondering if you could sort of have some people sort of look into this and see if anything could be done.
Yeah, James, a great point to raise. And the answer is we are doing something. It's like a lot of things. We should have been doing something 30 years ago. We weren't. We announced probably, Alex, 2 years ago that we are embarking on a massive rehabilitation of Newark Penn Station. That includes everything from, frankly, which the Mayor Baraka, and I give him enormous credit here, which includes a homeless shelter associated or adjacent to it. So the homeless population will have a place to go that's humane if they're not on a bench in Newark Penn Station. It includes renovation of the entirety of the station, including lighting, refreshing all the features. It's one of the most historic train stations in America, which is why it kills all of us, including you, James, that it was allowed to get into the state it got into. And that includes a huge emphasis on public security. But I don't make light of the story you're telling about your daughters, and it's maddening. But it is not as though we're not paying attention. And the we here is a big we, but in particular, NJ Transit, which is taking the lead. And maybe Kevin Corbett, who's the CEO, could connect with James and just walk through what the plan is. And I'd love to get, James, I'd love to get your reaction to see what you think. Yeah, see if you
I
think it
would love that.
addresses the
I don't know.
concerns.
I mean, my daughter was up at the platform, and there was someone like shooting drugs right in the little vestibule.
Yeah.
And then, we've experienced a person completely nude in the bathroom, like giving themselves a sponge bath. And I understand people have to bathe, but we wish there could be other ways these things could be accomplished. So I'll stay on the line, and I so much appreciate your response, Governor.
No, it's my pleasure, James. And again, we want to do this in a way that works for the commuters, but it's also humane for that person who needs help, either for a bath or rehabilitation or whatever it might be. And again, I give the mayor a lot of credit as well.
Okay, well, we're going to stay with transit issues and take another call. We have Christina from Montclair on the line.
Hey, Christina.
Hi, Governor Murphy. I hope you've been well.
Well.
So I was born and raised in New Jersey. Good to hear it. Unlike most New Jerseyans, I don't have a car, Governor, so I'm dependent on New Jersey Transit to get to school and to work. And I want to ask you about dedicated operating funding for NJ Transit. There have been a couple articles about this recently, and I'm sure you've seen them. And while I'm glad New Jersey has allocated some money to help with the turnpike, it doesn't fix the fiscal cliff once the federal money runs out. And people like me depend on a functional transit system to get to work, school, family, everything. And I appreciate that you haven't raised our fares, but without dedicated funds, I'm worried about increases or service cuts down the line. So I'd like to ask whether you will help protect transit-dependent people like me and commit to dedicating sources to fully fund NJ Transit and its operating expenses in this year's budget.
Yeah, well, Christina, that's it sounds like you're read into this in a big way, which I'm impressed by. And as you rightfully point out, this is the sixth budget where we have had no fare increase, and I think the fare increases in the last administration were 38% in total. We're incredibly proud of that, and we're fixing NJ Transit. The mess within the mess when we got here. By the way, we got another credit rating upgrade today, Nancy, from Fitch. I want to, again, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but now Moody's and Fitch.
Finish your answer about NJ Transit,
that.
and then, but let's talk about that before we go to the break.
So Christina, I had a meeting on how do we deal with the so-called pending fiscal cliff coming up over the next number of years. And I think what makes sense is probably a Richard Son, in the interest of time, Christina, to give you a call and give you some idea of the things we're thinking about. But we're not gonna, we are so invested on fixing NJ Transit and at the same time making it affordable, safe, reliable, on time, high customer experience. The last thing we're gonna do is take our foot off the gas on that front. So it's a complicated, great question, complicated answer, but there is an answer. There's a program, and we are on it.
So the credit upgrades, there's been a couple of them recently. I can see you're happy about it. You're going to have to explain to people why anyone should care. Like, why is this important?
Yeah, at the end of the day, this is important, and I probably should come next month with a dollar amount per taxpayer. But the higher your credit rating, the cheaper it is for New Jersey to actually access capital. And when it's cheaper to access capital, everybody saves money, and especially, obviously, our taxpayers. And it's a huge deal. The last administration, and I'm not sitting here only to take shots at other administrations, but it's a fact that they had our credit rating downgraded 11 times. This is now, today, our fifth, and I'll be shocked if we don't see more coming around the corner. And again, it makes it cheaper for us, and we pass those savings on to the taxpayer. And it also, I think, Nancy, it's a little bit like your stock price. When you get downgraded 11 times, even if you don't have a clue as to what that means or how that translates into your pocketbook, it's like 11 losing seasons or losing 11 games in a row. Because these are tough entities. They take you down a lot easier than they take you up. When they've taken you up 5 times, and I hope more than 5 times, puts a kick in your step. It's not just that we save money, but investors, businesses, families, folks take notice. And that's not unintended on our part. We want folks to take notice of momentum in New Jersey.
And which company is it that you just heard from?
Fitch. Thank you for asking. It was Moody's last week, Fitch.
Okay. Well, that's good news for New Jersey. And we're going to take a quick break and we will be back in a minute. You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy. I'm Nancy Solomon, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WNYC, and WHYY. Got a question for New Jersey's governor? Call us now at 844-745-8255. That's 844-745-TALK. Or pose your question on Twitter or Facebook with the hashtag AskGovMurphy.
We're live with Governor Phil Murphy. I'm Nancy Solomon. So let's talk about the Election Transparency Act, which you signed. Thursday, May 30th, the legislature passes the bill, and this allows companies that do business with local or state governments to donate to campaigns. It creates a slush fund of unregulated money for candidates. It gives you temporary power to fire the Election Law Enforcement Commission, which all of whom up and quit as soon as the bill passed. You signed the bill the following Monday. That's basically one business day later. We talked about this last month, but you declined to say much because it hadn't reached your desk, this bill. But now you've signed it. You own it. Why do you support this thing? Because very few people do.
I love the leading the witness, the slush fund. In fact, I did sign it. I didn't fire the commissioners. And here's one point that I think, and I'd ask you to look at this, pay close attention, if I may. It does allow for the first time out for the governor to appoint a bipartisan group of commissioners. And I believe there are 4 of them, one of whom will be the chair. And I don't have any news to make tonight. We're in that process. I think we have 90 days to put that group together, but we will not take 90 days. I want folks to look long and hard at the 4 people that we ultimately put up as commissioners. And I'd like them to assess that group and ask themselves, is this like a bunch of cronies? Is this a bunch of inside friends of the family? And I guarantee you the answer will be no to both. These are going to be absolutely tough-minded, independent, bipartisan commissioners who will absolutely do the right thing. This reminds me of the discussions around Liberty State Park, which I raise only hesitantly because maybe we'll get into that discussion. The impression with this bill is that we have a perfect system before this bill. And I think the system was flawed.
Everyone agrees it was flawed, but this bill just does not seem to be fixing anything.
I don't agree with that.
So what does it fix?
Well, first of all, it's not perfect. I'm not going to tell you that every element of this is perfect. I don't have the bill in front of me to give you the line by line what's great and what's not great. But here's what I think a couple of things it does. It does shine more transparency on the system. There's no question in my mind that this bill does that, far more so than the old system. Secondly, it is much more consistent in terms of its limits with what the realities are today. The last time the limits were set, I forget when they were, but it was a while ago, as in decades. And so why does that matter? And I'm a huge opponent of Citizens United. I'm a guy who's believed in limits to donations and transparency. I was Howard Dean's finance chair of the Democratic National Committee, so I'm still the same guy. The problem is when you combine Citizens United, which is a U.S. Supreme Court decision, with limits that are artificially low because they were set decades ago, far too much of the money in politics was going to outside organizations. It's a natural reality. They're legal, they're allowed, whether we like it or not, they exist. And far too little money is going in to the hard money side, the institutional candidate side of the ledger. This will address that. It will address transparency on both sides, and it will put more of the money proportionally into the main, which is where the money should belong. So that this bill absolutely does what I've just said.
Okay, so I had a couple follow-up questions, but I see we have a caller who wanted to ask you about this very issue. So Rita in Jersey City, let's put you on the line, and I hope you're going to ask something different than what we've already discussed about. Rita?
Maybe a different topic, Rita.
Hi. Well,
Hi,
I
Rita.
was pretty much going to ask you hi. I was just going to ask you pretty much the same question. And while there may be some positives in transparency, there are a whole lot of negatives by increasing the amount of money that can go into these campaigns. Jersey City is one of for a state that has such a history of corruption, it would seem to me the most prudent thing would be to really keep an eye on the potential for corruption and not to make the period that you can investigate less than it is now. I read that effectively it eliminates something like 80% of the current investigations into corruption. I mean, I get that there are a few good things about it.
Sorry, Rita. Yes, because it goes from 10 years to 2.
Retroactive.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can't, it's stunning to me that this has passed, and beyond that, the press about it it's been pretty hush-hush, and frankly, with all due respect, you signed it in a day. I mean, there is no, and a lot of people are concerned about it, and I'm a lifelong Democrat, but I see a lot of corruption here and a lot of developers uncomfortably cozy with a lot of people, and this just makes it a lot more likely to happen. And if you look at our history, it's just, I think it's unconscionable.
Yeah, Rita, I'm going to disagree with you, but I'm also going to tell you that I'm open-minded. If once this is in practice, there are elements of this that don't work, then we're going to have to revisit it. But increasing limits, I just strongly disagree with you there. When the limits aren't increased forever and always, and Citizens United at the U.S. Supreme Court allows unlimited money to outside groups, the natural reality occurs. You have too little money in the so-called main system, in the institutional candidate side of the house, and far too much money on the outside. If you raise the limits, you're going to draw more money into the candidate institutional side. I don't want to marry myself to a bill that has not come to our desk. As you know, Nancy, I'm probably for you frustratingly of that opinion. But I did see part of the outcry at ELEC and others who oppose this bill on this restriction to 2 years of review is that, the other side of it would be, you know what, there's a lot of stuff outstanding. Come on, let's get going here. And I know there's been a period of time where there hasn't been a full slate of commissioners, and that's been an issue. But someone was talking about a bill recently that has not come to my desk, but as a conceptual matter, I like it, which would be to put more funding into the operation to allow them much more aggressively and on a more timely basis to deal with these issues and adjudicate them. That to me is conceptually a sensible companion bill to the ELEC bill that we signed.
Okay.
And again, I respect what Rita said. I don't agree with it, but if it turns out she's right and I'm wrong, I commit we're going to revisit this.
Okay. Let's go back to Tennyson. Danye, what are you seeing on social?
All right, Karen from Rochelle Park. On Route 80 in Bergen and Passaic counties, where I drive, there's so much plastic litter and garbage that accumulates. Can something be done about this?
Somebody called in last time about this, and it frustrated the heck out of me, and I was not happy. So, Karen, the answer has got to be yes. And I'm not happy. I'm up and around there a lot, so I've got to pay closer attention. I think we should ask Diane Scacchetti or somebody in her team to follow. Is it Karen? Yes. From Rochelle Park, because that's not who we are, particularly given we banned plastic bags and straws. We're the most densely populated state in America. We can't get a so-called gentleman's C on the environment, and that includes trash and pollution. So, Karen, bear with us. We're going to have somebody on the team at a senior level follow up with you.
Okay, and we'll go back to the phones. We have Ronnie from Ronnie, you're going to have to tell us where you're from. Willow Grove, PA.
Willow Grove.
You're on the line with the governor.
Hey, Ronnie.
Hello, Governor Murphy. My name is Ronnie Long. I spent 37 years in New Jersey prison, innocent, including 5 years on death row. And I want to bring to your attention the Conviction Review Unit and ask you what's going on with that unit. I'm really I'm really looking forward to being exonerated. And in the 3.5 years since its existence, they only exonerated one person.
Okay, Ronnie, God bless you, first of all. And thank you for calling. You said you're in PA right now, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I was paroled to Pennsylvania to my parents.
Okay. Well, God bless you and God bless your folks. A, you're in my prayers. B, I'm going to ask our chief counsel, Parimal Garg, to follow up with you, because I think it's one of these situations, Ronnie.
Okay.
Is that okay? We're going to have to understand the specifics of your situation, but I promise you, somebody will call you within the next 24 hours, and God bless you, and hang in there in the meantime.
Is this something you're aware of? You know, that the unit that's supposed to be looking at cases and reviewing them for potential exoneration cases.
I'm surprised by the numbers, and I want to check that. So I'm not suggesting Ronnie's wrong at all, but I want to just make sure I understand what the facts are. But more importantly, what the facts are in Ronnie's case, and we owe him that. So,
okay,
thank you,
Ronnie. Thanks for your call. And sticking with criminal justice for a moment, since we last spoke, Attorney General Matt Platkin has taken over control of the Paterson Police Department. You appointed Platkin as AG, but he's independent from you. Do you agree with this move?
I do. And I think it's the right move. And it was executed as a result, and I don't want to put words in the Attorney General's mouth. I think he's doing an extraordinary job. It was done based on a cumulative set of reasons. Folks would like to point explicitly, we spoke about Najee Seabrooks here last time, God rest his soul, that situation. I think if Matt were here, he'd say it is a accumulation of a whole series of not just incidents, but patterns of behavior, et cetera. And so, and by the way, I'd separately want to say, this doesn't mean everybody in that force isn't up to snuff. Because a lot of the men and women in that force are, and that needs to be said, but it needed new leadership. And clearly there are some in that force that need to be dealt with. But it needs a huge dose of deepening between law enforcement on the one side and the community in Paterson that they serve on the other. Major Fife is an outstanding leader. He is the interim leader of the state police. Matt has got an outstanding leader from the New York Police Department who's coming in effective May 1st, so in a couple of weeks. He is the gentleman who is credited with calming the waters after Eric Garner's death in Staten Island in particular. He comes with a huge reputation. This needed to be done. And the last thing I'd say, Nance, it took a while to get to the place it got to. I think there's an enormous amount of hope and expectation that we can flip a light switch and all the challenges and issues will be resolved overnight. And we all know that's not the case. But I even these early days, you can see the early signs of progress, notwithstanding the challenges that continue. I spoke to the imam's brother, who's an imam, who was stabbed literally the other day during prayer services. So it's not as though there are not fundamental challenges. But Paterson is a great community. It deserves a great police force. And I believe these steps will lead to exactly that result.
I've spoken with several different activists who say it's a good first step, but one of the things they're really bothered by is the fact that there still are no civilian review boards that have subpoena power in New Jersey, and they want that. Like that's a check and balance against this situation getting out of control to begin with.
Yep.
So is that something you support?
I've been asked 1,000 times, I think 990 of them by you on this program. I'm open-minded, but I think in Paterson's case, and your question is not unique to Paterson, as you know better than I, or as well as I, let's let these steps take hold. And again, I'm certain that these are the right steps, and I'm optimistic even in the early weeks that this is going in the right direction.
Okay, let's squeeze in one quick last call. Dawn from Robbinsville. We only have a couple minutes, so please, let's try to get to your question as quick as you can. Dawn?
Okay. Warehouses have been popping up all over New Jersey, and I live in central New Jersey, and especially they've been popping up here. They're decimating our open space and causing major truck traffic both on local roads and our highways. They're causing an increase in flooding and crime rates and ruining the quality of life for community residents who end up having to live with the negative effects of this sprawl. In the age of climate change, I want to know your solution to curb this growth and save whatever open space is left, both for the health of the people in a community as well as its wildlife.
Yeah, Robbinsville is smack dab in the middle of the state, and I drive by it and through it all the time. And it is a great community, and it is quite striking that it is among, it's not the only community, but it is among warehouse ground zero communities. I'm open, Don. At a certain point, it's going to be enough is enough, and maybe we're there already. It is a testament to our location, our ports, and our airport that we are, 49 other states would die to be where we are. That's the good news. The challenging news is you get enormous distribution channels that run through New Jersey, including now when you add to e-commerce to the existing reality. But I am more than open-minded to try to figure out a way to say, okay, we get it. Let's do this responsibly, and let's do it right.
Okay, Dawn, thank you so much for your call. I was visiting Roosevelt a couple of weekends ago, which is in this same area, and it's pretty noticeable, all those warehouses that are popped up everywhere.
When you drive on the Pike and you're driving, plus or minus in that neighborhood, it is jaw-dropping. And by the way, these aren't little buildings either. These are massive, massive buildings.
Yeah, they are.
Thanks for having me, by the way.
Thanks for coming. You've been listening to Ask Governor Murphy, a co-production of WBGO, WHYY, and WNYC. Many thanks to our social media reporter, Tennyson Donier, producer Doug Doyle, show engineers George Wellington, Ed Haber, and Jason Isaac, and help from Jamara Wakefield, Stephen Smith, Louis Hockman, and Luke Green. I'm Nancy Solomon. Thanks for listening. This is Ask Governor Murphy.